Good morning from Lynn's garden in Port Orchard, Washington. It's another rainy day. We've had 7 months of this, guys. Enough is enough. There are places that need this rain desperately. Out here on the Kitsap Peninsula, we are known as a rainforest. Not a tropical rainforest, but a rainforest nonetheless. And as you can see, we literally are a rainforest. And this has been an absolutely ridiculous couple of years. Each year we just break more and more records. But anyway, this is your Sunday walkabout. Featuring different things that are blossoming, different things that I've done over the course of the week. I had to get in here and trim up my Russian lady vine again. Seems to be a daily thing now because the vine is growing so profusely that it covers the hummingbird feeders that are in there. And every morning I have to come out and get the ones that are hanging down and obstructing the fly pattern of the hummingbirds. Of course, they've got tons of other feeders around, but they prefer those. Well, let's see. This week, I trimmed up my Hellebore. Got all the dead leaves off of that so that my Hosta can take over. If you grow hellebores, and after they flower, they turn dead, and the dead leaves down below, trim off the dead leaves, trim off the flowers, and just go with the green. And plant them next to hostas. And as you can see, my ginger mint over here is going crazy. All that wet weather. Mint just seems to love the wet weather. Got a few more of my yellow potentilla coming out. The red hydrangea that I got for Mother's Day is still hanging in there. And the white flower was sold to me as some sort of a creeping crest or something. And that does very well in the wet too. And I've got some lavender. And the lavender will probably struggle simply because it likes a drier climate. But I keep trying it anyway, different varieties. And all this green back here, those are going to be purple phlox. And as you can see over there, as you look out across the pathway, I still have a sad-looking white rhodie over there. And my red azalea is underneath a bush of viburnum. So that's kind of sheltered from the rain, so that hasn't been beaten down yet. And have another azalea here in the bright red. My tree ivy, which is starting to get climatized, I guess. And over here, my iberis has pretty much gone to seed. I've got to cut off the blooms on my coreopsis, and they might bloom up again. simply because it's been so cold and it's fooling everything into thinking we're going back to winter. And then we'll come into spring again. Have some dianthus down here. And once again, some hostas. These huge things right here. Those are Shasta daisies. And they are monsters this year. But as we look up, you can see the pretty blossoms on the St. Paul's hawthorn tree. Aren't those gorgeous? Nice, bright red blossoms. And this must have a soil pH thing that it does, because I had the same trees, the St. Paul's hawthorns in Post Falls, Idaho, and they were bright pink. They weren't the deep red. So I don't think there's another variety. There could be, but these are definitely a deep red color. Of course, then again, we don't get any sunshine. And today, I think, if the weather holds, I'm going to get in here and separate out a few of my daylilies and put them out in the round circle by the road. I have a big heuchera in the back there, along with irises, and climbing on the fence I do have a clematis, and I believe that one is a salmon and white color. I transplanted it last year because it just wasn't doing well over by the pond. But I do have a huge purple one that loves the same space that the other one was in. And my evergreen one isn't liking all the rain. So the evergreen one on the left is a little bit straggly, a little bit yellow in color. I'm going to have to get some fertilizer on it. But it is so darn cold out here. And I prefer to use fertilizer spikes, but my dog likes them. She'll dig them up and she will eat them because they're basically a fish fertilizer. And as you can see, I've got some big, tall irises coming there. And I think those are yellows and browns, if I'm not mistaken. But once again, my St. Paul's hawthorn tree is blossoming very pretty. Each year it gets better and better. And behind that, I do have the California lilac, which is going to be blue. So I will have red and blue in this corner. And it's always later to bloom than the one in the back by the pond. Oh, I hear you, little bird. But as you can see, I do not lie. We are a rainforest. Look at that roof. And if it ever dries out, I will scrape all that stuff off. Even though it looks pretty. It's no good for the roof. Now, as I turn, I have my yellow rambling rose, still blooming very well. And after that finishes its bloom, I'm going to be chopping down the top and making it more of an umbrella. My camellia has long since bloomed. And I ordered in my spikes, so I'm going to try them again. Maybe the dog is getting too old to dig them up and eat them all. Because it sure is easier to pound in a few spikes, fertilizer spikes, than it is to keep running back and forth and mixing up the fertilizer. And this over here is one of the Meadow Lilacs, or California Lilacs. And that is such a pretty blue. Right now it looks pretty yucky because it's wet. But there is a bee over there feasting as he disappeared. There he is. Just not going to cooperate. But this is a real purpley blue. And right next to it we have our white dogwood that is huge this year. This one has just loved this area. And I love the contrast with the white and the blue. And the cattails are getting tall. And I just cleaned this the other day, but it is loaded with pollen once again. So it's going to be a weekly chore. I'm just going to have to get in here and keep draining it and cleaning it out until the pollen is gone. Ah! Right now we still have Scotch broom in full force, and that's basically what gets in there. And I have yet to do this Hellebore. This one I will trim up when the flowers decide to die down more. Right now they still look fairly pretty. And I've got Shasta daisies and a poppy coming up and a pygmy rhododendron there. And then of course my jasmine growing on the pagoda, or pergola, I'm sorry. And I've got my white rhodie looking sad because it takes the hit. It has nothing over it to protect it from the rain. But my red azalea down there is doing very well. Next to the red azalea, that little green patch, that is a upright fuchsia. And I have another one on the other side of my pink dogwood. And let's see if I can get it in here. Oops, wrong place. There we go. There's my pink dogwood just starting to throw out its flowers. And last year that had flowers on it for a really, really long time. I was surprised. And after my white rhodie gets done, we have a red one over here. And this is really a deep, deep red one. I'll try and get in there and get a closer view of it. But that's loaded with blossoms as well. And in the foreground here we have a purple and white phlox. Some anemones in red and the bronze 9-bark behind. Which I love the color of these leaves. They're kind of a, well, bronze is probably the best word for it, but they shimmer when they're wet, and they just look amazing. And this will have little pink blossoms on it, kind of a cluster type flower to it. And after it's done flowering, I do trim it back heavily. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to see my pond when I'm sitting on my lounge chair. I just pruned back the Japanese Purus because I really don't want it getting too much taller than what it is there. All right, it looks like I've got a rose bush down here. Don't know what's going on there. I will have to try staking that up. So that'll be one task for today, to try and get it bound up to where it's not all toppled over in the rain. We had a lot of rain last night. I don't know how many inches, but it was enough to overflow the fountain and turn the blocks wet on the outside. And you can see that right there. And it doesn't usually get high enough to overflow in the front. But as you can see, it did. So it must have come down pretty heavily. All right, moving right along here. I've got my hostas back here. And yes, I did trim these up last year, or divide them. I put 4 big clumps, I think, out in the round circle. And there you have it again this year. I should divide it. I'll probably divide them again at the end of the season, or wait till spring. My knockout rose is finally showing some life. And this is a deep red knockout rose. I have my mason bead tubes, and I've got some more full ones that I'll be taking out today. And what I do with the full ones until it becomes fall again. Of course, it doesn't feel like it's ever been summer. We had maybe 3 days. But I keep my mason bee tubes in my shed. They need humidity, so I keep the jar with the top slightly tipped. And they stay in here, and they stay in summer type temperatures after they're full, but protected from the rain. So I'll be taking the ones out that are in the tubes outside today and bringing those into the shed. It helps protect them from mites and wasps and things like that too. And around here we have my blueberry bushes that are finally blossoming up. My lilacs are going by. The pistache tree is finally leafing out. And the pistache tree has a leaf, I don't know if you can see that, almost like a poison sumac. Very similar. And this week, if you've been following my single posts, I got in and I clipped out the blackberries and I weeded out and found my strawberry patch. Rhubarb is doing nicely. On the back fence, we have kiwis that have never produced. But it's a vine on the back fence. And then yesterday, it was so rainy. Oh, and you'll see a sparrow in there. It was so rainy yesterday that I got in here and worked underneath the trees. Didn't get too terribly wet. But I did weed a lot. Got in underneath my arborvitae. I still have yet to do that back section. Have a blackberry growing back there. But I did find my holly. I found some daylilies and found my Japanese pyrus, which once again I'm going to trim that off, let it fill out. And this is a pussy willow bush. And I'm keeping it as a bush. Neighbors don't appreciate it going over their fence. And I don't appreciate having to prune it from over their fence. Now let's see how my peas are doing this week. Look at that. They finally took to the fence. It took many tries of me trying to get them up there without using string or anything. But there they are. My sugar snap peas. And a bunch of hostas. And that's looking back towards the pond. With all this rain, it has been one heck of a time trying to keep things weeded. And without the sunshine, I'm afraid this is not going to be a very good blueberry year. Just been too cold. And not enough sun, too much rain. And yes, I wish I could send it to the places that really need it. Now this is a huckleberry bush. And I think I'm going to pop that out, put it a little bit farther back in with the daylilies. And Chandra has ordered an Azure blue satin tree. Hibiscus tree, is it? No, Rose Sharon tree. There we go. It's a Azure blue satin Rose Sharon tree. And it grows about the same height as my butterfly bush. And it flowers continuously all summer in a very, very azure blue color. And it will just add a pop of color to here. And I'll trim it up so that you can still see the Japanese pyrus and the stuff behind it. And it'll get to be about 10 feet tall, which should block our view from the neighbor's house. But it should also make it so that I can still see my panicle hydrangea, which is in kind of a very light white and pink color. And we'll still have the dogwood that I can see back here. And my post lamp, which now has peas growing up. I did have to tie those because they weren't going around the post very well. But I love the texture on my dogwood. Almost has like a wrinkled effect. And both of the dogwoods have that. And I've got my hostas. I have one pea plant growing next to the hostas that I missed when the squirrels came in and redistributed them to this side. I planted them originally behind my shed, where they are now, and the squirrels dug them up and they put them over here. So when I saw them start coming up over here, I had to dig them up again and put them behind my shed. But I missed one. Squirrels in this area have their own sense of design. Anyway, I'm thinking that in next to my blueberry bush is where the huckleberry bush is going to go. And I've got the lemon balm and another bronze 9-bark, purple anemones. And lemon balm you can not only scent lotions with, but you can also do oils and use it as tea. I have a dehydrator, which I can dehydrate for tea. And this is a red rose, and this year, this rose is going to be absolutely gorgeous. Get a gander at all the buds that are on there. And this is a continuous, excuse me, a continuous bloom. So it will, as the rosebuds die down, I clip them off and they will rebloom all summer long. That's if we ever get summer. And last week I got in here and I weeded. Yeah, right. So you can see this is turned not into a rainforest. We are now a jungle. Things are growing just way too fast. And some Shasta daisies on the left, a hosta with a rose behind it. And I have taken part of the hosta out and put it out front as well. And I probably will do more as the rose gets bigger. Thank you for the rose, Kate. This is the one that survived. Unfortunately, they were sent to me as a gift during the winter with leaves on them because they had been forced. And I had to keep them in the house because of the 10 to 19 degree temperatures. So this one has survived. The other one did not. And I'm not sure which one this one is until it blooms. So we'll just have to baby her along. And I think this one survived because of the overhang of the trees. Anyway, back here I have some anemones, some Japanese anemones that will grow tall, and they'll have pink flowers with a green center and a surround of yellow. I also have some Columbine.